Hello, kings, queens, beautiful people who watch this channel. Today is probably one of the last more social politically related videos I'll make, mostly because A, I'm not trying to be controversial, and B, topics like that do tend to take a very heavy soul on the toll. I prefer talking about entertainment as well. I only mention certain social issues if relevant to what I'm discussing, but from here on out, I'll try to keep it as entertainment based as possible. Today, because a friend suggested it to me, I thought I'd talk about colorism, racism, and xenophobia as a whole, because though all terms can be very similar in terms of being discriminatory, they're different in their own ways and may not be able to distinguish the difference. Now, this is just an opinion piece. I am not a sociologist nor a psychologist nor an expert in the field of this, so this is just all opinion. You can take it with pinches of salt, as far as I'm concerned. Now, racism has to do with the discrimination or prejudice or belief of superiority on the basis of race, right? Colorism is the way I describe it is colorism is the discrimination based on skin color. Now, for most people, they're like, what the fuck is the difference? The difference is the way I see is colorism has to do within the group as well as outside the group, whereas racism is group A versus group B, right? Colorism, it goes back as far as I'd say before slave times, because back in slave times, generally, if I'm to use the example of a lot of black folks out here, right? Being light skinned meant that you were generally the byproduct of a slave and slave master, and they would generally be more favored. They'd be the house slave. They'd be allowed to stay in the house and not be picking the cotton outside in the hot sun. They generally were seen as, in beauty standards, being light skinned or being bright, as close proximity to Eurocentric features was seen as desirable, good, great things. The darker you were, less so, because being black or dark in any sense, and this doesn't just exist within black communities, it exists from what I can tell in a lot of Asian communities too. If you had darker skin, it meant that you were poor. It meant that you worked in the rice field. It meant that you were a peasant. The reason, it only really towards the 20th century and as technology and society evolved, that being tan is seen as a good thing, as a desirable thing, because if you were able to get a tan, that meant you were able to afford a vacation, which meant you had money. That's the difference. Being seen as exotic or with a sun-kissed tan has only been seen desirable now because it's a signifier of class. Like the whole being dark skinned and that being associated with beautiful has only really happened within the last 15 years, or I'd say the duration I've basically been alive, because there wasn't very many dark skinned models. It was never really historically popular to be dark skinned. It was associated with negative things. Not even positive words that rhyme with the word black, smack, attack. You know what I mean? Being dark is seen as bad. Being light or white or pure is associated with innocence, purity, angelicism, all that other shit, right? And though I believe that's changed a lot in certain parts of the world, there's still skin lightening creams. Being seen as light skin is still preferable. I've seen documentary upon documentary where it's like, oh, no, make sure you marry somebody else so your kids turn out like light skinned, you know. And that's where it can kind of evolve into a sort of internal colorism thing where I even heard a girl once tell me she wanted to have blonde hair and blue eyes because it seemed desirable back when she was growing up. She's not even that much older than me, may I point out. And I was like, sure, be happy. Like, big booty in the town's like in now. It's the commodity now. It's only really within the last decade I realized shit, things that are typically associated with being black, what black people do, is actually popular now. That's the reason I can find out foundations my shade that are actually fucking affordable. But see, like I said, colorism can exist within the group and outside the group. Like, the amount of times I've seen people hating on light skinned girls. Well, you tend to be more so light skinned people hating on people who are dark skinned or team light skinned, team dark skinned. I'm like, at the end of the day, you're both black. I don't know why you're getting into fight. I wouldn't be considered light skinned or dark skinned to anyone here. I'd just be considered black generally because it's a predominantly white country. So that's how I describe colorism. It has a lot more to do with skin pigmentation and the form of classism as well. Like I said, that's how it differs and is similar to racism. But like I said, it's never, the difference I find here is that it doesn't tend to be take a more explicit nature as it does from what my friend in the US was at least telling me in that case. Because if it's explicit, people can just call you out on it. It's evident. You can see it clearly. Whereas if it's more persuasive or ways of saying something dark is negative or having negative associations with dark-skinned people, it doesn't sound as explicitly racist. There might not be internally anything you think wrong with it. You know what I mean? That's the difference. And I also believe that I always get notifications at the wrong time. That's the way I feel certain groups have been able to pave the way. They're not explicit about what they. Sorry, I got messages there about what they. About their disdain or prejudice. They just say it in such intelligent and articulate ways. You think, oh, that's not that bad. You know what I mean? Now, with the xenophobia, the difference with xenophobia, it's based more on nationality than it is race. Like, say for example, somebody here is discriminating against somebody for being Polish. They're of the same general racial group, being white, right? But discriminating them on the basis of where their nationality originates from, which is being Polish. That's how it differentiates itself from racism. Like, they can all tie into each other at times, but I find generally if a person tends to be one thing, they tend to hate other groups too. Like, I remember watching Mr. Beat's video on why there's so much hatred on the Jews, and it made me realize generally groups who hate one group of people tend to hate a lot of groups of people. Like, I've seen videos of like very far right wing groups. If they don't tend to like immigrants, they don't tend to like LGBT people, they don't tend to like a certain, and it just kind of categorizes on and on. Some groups are very specific in their dislike of people, but it tends to spread to others. And I'll say this once, if ever, just because if you're of a said group doesn't mean you can't discriminate against another group. Like, the amount of videos I've watched, probably in the double digits, of people who are Malaysian or Eurasian who've been treated horribly or xenophobic because they are mixed race, say, for example. You being a minority does not exempt you from any form of bigotry or makes you the exception to it. Do you get what I mean? Just to make a distinction for that. But also, all these things I've described come in different forms. It can be socially, it can be on institutional level, and it can be on a governmental, there's a hierarchy to it. Now, you can deal with it in a legal sense. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist socially. It just tends to suppress itself down. For as long as people are free to think, people say negative shit about anything that can discriminate against a person on the basis. In a perfect society, everyone who's gay, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, disabled, abled, trans, whatever the fuck, we all live in a peaceful society. Everyone treats each other the same. You do your own thing, I don't care. You do your own thing, I don't care. Reality is not like that, though. And I'm hoping some of the things I said in this video are informative. Maybe not scripted in the best form, but I'd hope they'd get to somebody and to understand that. And I guess I've been lucky in my case that when I usually have racially abused, because I have so much self-assuredness, I don't care, because the best form of representation is to be the best version of yourself. So I just keep making my money, I keep studying, I keep doing me, basically. The people who like me, and if they don't, they don't. And that's what's it. Or I always encourage, like, say, people making original works that represent themselves, because the amount of times I watch a show and I'm like, can I please get one black family that ain't in the hood or have some sort of like crime going on? Like, thank you. Can I get some like show that maybe has one black nerd like myself? Anyway, before this video hits the 10-minute mark, there are all the points I wanted to list and how said things come about. There's a very unorthodox video today, but hopefully somebody finds it interesting, likes it, and comments on it. So I thank anyone who watches this video. If you have any comments, watch, explain, subscribe, do the usual. And thank you.